This is Crispin Freeman, and you're listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files.
Recognized, Uncle Walker, D01. Recognized, Emily of Arden, D12.
Hello, team. Thanks for joining us for episode 6 of Whelmed, the Young Justice Files, Season 2. Welcome to the cave. My name is Rich, and I am here with my not-a-sidekick, Emily.
Hey, everybody.
As many of you know, Caleb has joined the Justice League proper. We were going to have him join us on this episode, but they sent him on a mission to Tibet, and we ran into a snag.
You really should have left your daughter at home for that one, Rich.
Yeah. She's a very helpful 3-year-old. I was going to say something else, and then I just lost it. Something about ultraviolence, but I just couldn't do it.
That one.
You did.
I remained professional for that one.
I was going to say something about her enjoying ultraviolence, but no, that's not true, and it's terrible. Don't say that. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can find us on Twitter at the YJ Files, on Facebook at Crashing the Mode, on our website, crashingthemode.com, on the yjfiles.tumblr.com, and at our email address, whelmedpodcast@gmail.com.
You're a tourist from the future?
Why so surprised? Half the meat at Comic-Con are from my era. Look, guys. We should all be friends. I'm really one of you. Part of the heroic legacy, right? My name's Bart Allen. You know, grandson of Barry Allen, the Flash.
Noted. Not believed, but noted.
What's not to believe? I've clearly got Flash's speed, his amazing good looks. Frankly, I can't wait to meet him.
And with all that housekeeping and absurdity out of the way, let's dive in.
Yeah, let's dive into Hello, Megan.
Hello, Megan.
The title of this week's episode is Bloodlines. The release date was June 2nd, just a week after the previous episode. And the in-episode date was February 28th, both in our current time period and 40 years in the future. We'll get into that in a little bit. The director was Mel Zwire, and the writer was Peter David.
I just realized, actually, that was almost 5 years ago to the day, as of the day we're recording this. It's June 5th right now. Huh. Wow. God, it's been 5 years. Crazy town. Special guest voice credits this week is Nicole Dubuque. One of our absolute favorite writers for the show is also an actress, and she did the voice of Iris West Allen for the entire series, actually, but especially in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's basically it. We get Jason Marsden, his first appearance as Impulse, and I think that's all we've got. So let's dive into this mission.
Just in time for your next mission.
Okay. In our pre-credit scene, we open up with a quick scene of a dystopian future in which an unknown teenager working on a tech device of some kind is seen. We just no idea what's going on there. We then cut back to the present-day cave where Nightwing is attempting to decipher the hieroglyphs that Batgirl recorded from the Bialian ruins we saw last week. His chat with Tim and Gar is interrupted by an unknown energy impulse, and the tech device we saw earlier suddenly appears in the cave. It opens, and out pops a teenager in costume who is just so excited to be there.
So excited. Nightwing locks down the cave, and the mysterious kid reveals himself to be a speedster who knows the superhero names of all the members of the team in the room and uses some odd, confusing slang. After he adopts the name of Impulse, based on the computer mentioning an unknown energy impulse, the mysterious teen runs off deeper into the cave. After a brief but hectic chase, Nightwing manages to Nightwing him, restrain him. He got Nightwinged, so that they can try to get some answers.
We then cut over to Tibet, where Red Arrow and Cheshire are scoping out a mountain hideout where the original Roy Harper is rumored to be located. Jade reminds Roy that he can't be the father that their daughter, who they decided to bring on this dangerous mission for some reason, needs until he moves on from his clone guilt. We then
Maybe she's
cut
very
back over
helpful.
to...
We don't know.
She's the most helpful, 1-year-old child.
I don't even think she's one.
She's not.
She's a baby. This is terrible
so small.
parenting. Don't do that.
Don't bring your children into ninja zones unless they can protect themselves.
Yeah, no kidding.
Parenting advice with Emily and
101.
Rich. Emily, who knows nothing. We then cut back to the cave where Impulse reveals that he's a time-traveling tourist from the future and that he's the Flash's grandson, Bart Allen. He also reveals that he apparently knows the secret identities of Nightwing, Robin, and Beast Boy, much to their collective surprise.
Your name is Tim? And yours is Dick? Yeah, that's pretty great. While the team remains skeptical, Impulse's knowledge of classified information convinces them that he might just be from the future. Bart then gives us the audio clip that we use before our Crashing the Mode segment and explains that the mode is bad, but crashing it is great. Future slang is weird like that. As Mal enters the cave on his motorcycle through the ramp and not through Zeta Tube, Impulse escapes out the door. But Nightwing has already planted a microscopic tracer in Impulse, actually, when he gave him a drink of water earlier in the scene. As Impulse heads for Central City, Dick calls someone for backup.
Over in Central City, Barry Allen and his wife Iris are throwing an anniversary party for Joan and Jay Garrick, the original Flash. Impulse arrives on the scene and gives everyone in that confused crowd a bunch of hugs. Barry tries to deny the possibility that Impulse is his grandson because he and Iris don't have kids yet, but Iris announces that she's actually pregnant. But before Impulse can give away any more spoilers, Wally arrives to help sort out this mess.
Then Iris gets a call from her boss at GBS revealing that a new supervillain is terrorizing downtown Central City, calling for the Flash's head. The Flash helps evacuate civilians before he and Impulse, who follows him downtown, realize that the energy waves that this villain is giving off make it impossible for them to get close enough for a fight.
Back in Tibet, the super spouses silently sneak into what is a monastery, a hideout in Tibet. We never really get any clarification on what this thing is, but they go there with Jade carrying Leon in a sling like the crazy mom that she is. Love her to death,
Terrible
but
idea. It's just
they silently
so
take
bad.
down a couple of guards, only for their daughter to give away their position by laughing at the fight. As Roy and Jade are surrounded by ninjas, we cut back to Central City, where Kid Flash has arrived on the scene. Impulse and Flash come up with a quick plan to disable the villain.
Unfortunately, during that plan, Neutron's power overloads, destroying a large portion of downtown and forcing the speedsters to back off. In the aftermath of the explosion, though, a destroyed Neutron regenerates, putting his body back together from scratch, minus the powered armor that, according to two shadowy, alienish observers, was keeping his powers in check, keeping him on mode, quote-unquote. Because they can't control him anymore, the two figures abort their experiment and destroy all of their equipment. Back downtown, the Flash comes up with a plan to run the villain out of the city while he's still rebuilding himself and the pulses are handleable, but he's tripped up by Impulse just before the villain explodes again. The Flash and Impulse are pulled out of the blast by Jay Garrick, who has costumed up and showed up on the scene, and Kid Flash. Barry admits that Impulse likely saved his life. And as he's admitting this, Impulse disappears, running back to Neutron, the villain who is rebuilding his body from scratch again. Bart tosses a strange little blue device into Neutron's rebuilding body, which ends up shutting down or neutralizing his powers. But Impulse doesn't tell anyone else about what he did.
Off-screen in Tibet, Cheshire and Red Arrow have punched their way through dozens of ninjas, much to the delight of their little daughter Leon, in order to get to a locked door that they were apparently guarding. Inside, in a cryogenically frozen pod, they finally find the original Roy Harper, who is clearly missing his right arm. Back in the cave, Nightwing announces that a few scientific tests have revealed that Impulse could only be Barry's grandson from the future. They all say goodbye to the young time traveler, but it turns out that his time machine is broken, and he's now trapped in his past, our present.
Sorry. One of my favorite lines from the show is Gar saying, maybe he's moving 1 second at a time into the future.
By that definition, we are all time travelers.
We are all time travelers. In the final scene, we go back to that dystopian wasteland we saw at the top of the episode. It's revealed that Impulse either built or reconstructed somehow this time machine with the help of the character of Neutron, who is older in this scene. We also learn that Bart isn't just a time-traveling tourist. He's actually on a mission to prevent that horrible future from happening. A mission that starts with saving Flash's life by stopping Neutron, but as we will find out, is more complicated than that. As Impulse climbs into his time machine and travels to the past, or just after that, we see that his departure has changed the future/present of Nathaniel, who is Neutron. Nathaniel now no longer has the inhibitor collar and the orange jumpsuit that marked him as Neutron, and it's no longer snowing ash. However, despite the fact that the time stream should have all changed at once, Mount Justice remains a devastated ruin of what it once was.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. Yeah,
A lot
let's do it.
happens this time around.
Feel the Aster. Boom.
Superboy, are you alright?
I'm fine. Feeling the Aster.
I got some fun things to start.
Go for it.
There's a lot going on in this episode. I'm going to dive into some of this in the debrief. But man, Impulse, I thought when Impulse first came out in the 90s, I thought he was going to be a throwaway character. That was just them trying to introduce yet another speedster into the world. But what ended up happening was he got his own series. And that series was written by Mark Waid, who's one of my favorite comic writers of all time. The first 10 or 12 issues that Mark Waid wrote of Impulse are must-reads, in my opinion. If you have not read them yet, go find them on Comixology and pick them up. They are amazing. That's when Bart Allen as a character became like a fan favorite of mine. The thing that's different, I mean, they changed a lot about his character as far as I know. He doesn't come from a dystopian future. He does come from the future. He is the grandson of Barry Allen. But in the comics, he has a problem where he ages very quickly. He aged to his current age very quickly to the point where he could not grow up among people because his brain, his body, his everything moved too quickly. So he actually was raised in a virtual reality Matrix-like computer program that could be overclocked to keep up with his own brain. So basically his entire life was a video game. So when you see Impulse acting the way that he acts in the show, in the comics, the reason why he did that was because he grew up in a video game. Like, you can always get do-overs. No one ever gets hurt. Like, it's literally interacting with artificially intelligent, supporting cast characters in his own life. Plus, it's why he speaks so quickly. He's had to learn how to slow his speech down because he never had to in his normal future. If I remember correctly, though, part of the reason he came to the past was because this problem of aging was going to kill him and was like a medical issue. And there was something happened, and I can't remember exactly what it was. I'll do some research for it, and we'll talk about it a bit more in the Flash Secret Origin that I'll either have done or be doing. And that he goes back into the past to touch base with the Flash and something about the Speed Force and that kind of thing. So very different than his... Anything in particular you're laughing at in that whole ramble?
Just I didn't know all that. I knew a little bit about Impulse only because I picked up like the first volume of the old 90s Young Justice comics at some point during the show. Right. And he's part of the original team in that. So I knew a little bit about his personality, but all of that is fascinating and I didn't know any of that. So, I learned things here too.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. I love the idea that he was raised in this virtual reality environment that is the only thing that could keep up with his brain, which we get a little echo of in the show because like he and Barry Allen start speaking really quickly and only they can understand each other. And that's another thing that gets talked about in the comics is the idea that Barry and Wally down the line in the comics anyway, it's not just their bodies that are fast, like their whole physiology moves at a much quicker pace. You have to, if you're moving that fast, you have to be able to process information faster, which is really interesting to me. I love that they had the silly Flash costume ring from the comics. Like
I loved that.
They didn't even hide
I have no idea
it.
how this works, but it's so great.
It is so great. I love it, and I'm glad they put it into the show because it's classic Flash and it's silly, but somehow it fit. I don't know. It's something you can really only do in animation. You can't do it on the live action show and stuff, that kind of thing.
Arrowverse just stuffed that whole leather suit into just a tiny little ring. Totally would
Yeah,
work
exactly.
on the CW.
Totally would work. If you look at some other shows, particularly in the past when they have had speedsters like Quicksilver and like the 90s X-Men cartoon and that kind of thing, animating speedsters is tough. You know? It's just, they look kind of silly. Either they look like, okay, you're making them look like they're running really fast, but they're not because you can't, the animation technology isn't good enough. And just watching Impulse rocket through the cave with the streaks behind him and the way his hands move when he's spinning those little dials for the shower and like just all of these little things, it was like, oh, thank goodness. Now you can see a speedster done really well. And one of the first times I saw it done really well was in The Incredibles. When Dash is running across the water so fast and that kind of stuff, oh, he's handled so well. It was one of the first times I'd seen a speedster really like, you get that visceral feel of how they move. I absolutely love it, and I'm glad that they were able to bring that in because there's a lot of speedsters in the DC universe. We haven't even scratched the surface yet.
And there's 4 in just this episode.
I know, right? There's Johnny Quick. We haven't gotten to Johnny Quick yet. Max Mercury, Jesse Quick, who's Johnny Quick's daughter. We haven't seen XS yet. XS is another speedster from the Legion of Superheroes in the future, which is just past Impulse's like era. And the Flash does a ton of time traveling and jumping and stuff. Again, we're going to talk about this a bit in the Canary Debrief, but yeah. And of course, the twins. The Tornado Twins, I think they end up calling him because they both of his kids
that's
are
adorable.
born with. Yep, they're both born with Flash's powers, and it's Dawn. Dawn is the boy, and the girl is Dan or Dana. I have to look it up. I'm gonna look it up real quick.
I think Dawn is the girl.
Dawn is the girl.
He says
Dawn
Aunt
and Dan.
Dawn.
Aunt Dawn. That's it. Yeah, I think they're called the Tornado Twins. Yes, they are Dawn and Dawn, D-O-N and D-A-W-N, Allen, who are the children of the Flash. Yeah.
Why would you do that to your kids, though?
I don't know. Why would you do it to yourself? Because they can't understand who you're talking to when you're actually calling
Dawn,
for one of them.
Yes,
they both turn around every time. No, thank you. That would be insane. Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of speedster stuff to come, right? And we've seen some stuff in the live action shows like Savitar and the Reverse Flash and all the villains and that kind of thing. But even just heroes, man, there's a lot of speedsters in the universe. So we'll see how all that goes. But yeah, so what was Impulse like in the comics? You said he was in the Young Justice comics. I didn't read those. I just read his own spin-off comic.
And I didn't read much of them. I only read like the first volume because that was all I could get my hands on at the time. He's kind of similar. He's kind of just freewheeling, having fun, running all over the place. I feel like he had a crush on one of the female members of the team, and I cannot remember which one it was. My mind is telling me it was either Arrowette or Secret, and I could not tell you which one it was for the life of me.
Mm-hmm.
But he had that going on. He was a little bit flirty, which was part of it. Just all of the speedsters. I like that, apparently.
Seems to be a trend.
And
yeah.
And he was pretty fun. He was very much, especially based on what you were saying about him growing up in a video game, he's very much a product of the 90s. Like that is a plot line you would only come up with in the 90s.
Yeah.
But he was a very fun character.
It did lead to some really interesting storylines because when he was, came back to the past and was fighting villains, he would do crazy stuff like, oh, there's a missile being shot at, the city or whatever. Oh, I'll just go race it and disarm it, And I mean, like, yeah, okay. But the problem was that he never understood that could potentially go horribly wrong for everyone. Like there was no actual consequences to a lot of his actions being raised in this, matrix like virtual reality, which is a really, really good explanation for why he was the way that he was, and then he had to learn these lessons, sometimes in really painful ways, because the first time someone gets really badly hurt or dies, he can't process that very well. Like, it hits him harder than those of us who kind of were slowly introduced to that kind of consequence. Yeah. Now, clearly that's not the case with this impulse, right? Because he comes from this dystopian future issue, which was a massive change from the comics.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I do like the way that he was handled, though, in the whole show. So
everything with the dystopian future scenes in this, because we get so little of it, and I feel like we don't see it in the rest of the season. I don't remember exactly. There may have been quick shots. I don't remember.
There are a couple of clips, yeah, of him having flashbacks, but
okay. But from what little we see, it is really cool, and they're even just those first two scenes. There are little details that I loved. Like, I love that they have Neutron in an inhibitor collar, because we haven't seen those in a while, and I'm like, oh, right, those exist. This is technology we have, and I like that the show references back to that. It's not just these are here when they're convenient. It's like, no, these are here all the time, and we need to use them all the time for this type of thing. So that was just kind of a great one.
I just realized when you were saying that, because part of me was like, why does he still have the inhibitor collar on? If Impulse has his off, why don't they just take his friends off? And then I just now realized, because he doesn't want to take it off. He doesn't want to be Neutron. He doesn't want these powers. Like, he apparently has caused a lot of death and destruction. And then suddenly that whole little thing of like, why wouldn't he take it off, becomes kind of a painful deep dive, into who he is. Yeah. Oy. You got a lot of stuff about Roy and Cheshire.
I do have a lot of stuff about Roy and Cheshire, because I love them, and I love their dynamic, and I love everything that we get to do with them in this episode. They are, depending on who you ask, they are either Red Cat or Cheshroy. I generally lean towards Cheshroy, but that's just me. Because Red Cat is like a little too generic. Color, animal. Sounds like an actual superhero. But yeah, I love their little subplot in this. Like, I understand that the main plot is Impulse, and I enjoy that too. But I love that we just keep getting these shots to like murderous family outing in the mountains of Tibet. This is just a normal thing that we're doing, and they act like it's so completely normal. Like, this is amazing. And we made a lot of jokes about how Cheshire is a bit of a crazy mom, but I kind of love that this is how they've characterized her as a mom, that she's super overprotective, because there are so many ways you could do Cheshire as a mom wrong. There are so many ways that could go horribly wrong, that she could either not feel like the character that we've already been introduced to, or it just wouldn't work. But this is just a great way of doing it, of like, yeah, everything we've seen about Cheshire is that she is very passionate and cares a lot about everything that she does, to an extent that may not always be the healthiest choice. So if it's a choice between leave my kid at home or bring them with me where I can protect them, she is going to do that. And so I love that, and I love seeing her in that role, because there are so many shows that would be like, yes, this character has a child now, and now that we've introduced that, you are never going to see this child again, because child actors are hard to work with, so they're just going to go over here. But because it's cartoon, your daughter's there all the time, and Cheshire is a hilariously overprotective mom, and it's adorable on some weird level.
Yeah, strangely overprotective, and also bringing her daughter to Tibet. Like, she doesn't want anybody else to like watch her daughter, but she's going to put her in what was supposed to be a sneak mission, but turned out not to be.
Oh, yeah. In that line of thinking, the line where Roy just so done with everything just goes, I told you we should have left her with your sister, is so funny. But it also, like, on some level tells you a little bit about their relationship, and I like that they're able to do that. Like, something that could just be a throwaway joke, like, also tells you that Roy was not okay with this, but he went with it.
Right.
Just so, because Jade was like, we're bringing our daughter, and he's like, okay, fine. It means that Artemis presumably knows about Leon. Like, I'm not sure if we ever see them interact this season, but it implies that Artemis might know
I'm not sure I might know, maybe, yeah, but they could have just been like, hi, by the way, you're an aunt. Here's your niece. We have to go somewhere and do a thing. I could totally see that happening as well.
I can totally see that happening as well. Part of me thinks that Artemis might know just because Jade was on her own for a while, might have maybe turned to her family and was like, hey, so while I was away, I married a superhero and now I'm pregnant. Help.
Right.
Possibly.
Maybe, yeah.
And it also implies that Roy knows that they're siblings, because I don't remember if he was ever in the room when they talked about that in season 1, because everybody else found out, but I'm not sure if he did. So just that little nod of like, Roy at this point knows that they are siblings.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's been 5 years. They got married. They'd spent a lot of time together. Artemis wasn't hiding it anymore. Yeah. One of our previous fan services had a speculation drawing of what Leanne would look like when she was older. And I don't think they can do a time jump far enough in the future.
Yeah, no.
That's reasonable at all to get Leanne as an actual character in the team, unless they do, which they might. I mean, I have nodded to how much I want to see a future like Legion of Superheroes 31st century timeline, and we've now obviously seen Impulse, who's in the future, right, as well. So maybe we'll get some kind of time jump visual for the future and see Leon in like costume or something. Yeah.
That could be kind of cool.
That would be very, very cool, yeah. You had a note here too about people still getting Kid Flash's name wrong.
Yeah, there's the random like paramedic or policeman or something who's like, hey, Speedy, nice to see you around again. And he's just like, that's not my name. It was never my name.
And I do feel bad for Wally because he just gets it rubbed in his face more and more and more about how he's not technically as fast as the rest of the Allen family, or even has some of their powers, for example. Like he's got the tech backup of like his goggles and, that kind of thing. But, Impulse even says like you don't have the Allen family vision or something like that where they can slow things down. So I hope that changes if he ends up coming back in the future. But yeah, we'll see. Because in the comics, he was also slower than the Flash. And then that all changed, and he actually became faster and more powerful than the Flash down the line.
That would be interesting.
That would be really cool. Well, I would say let's jump into the Canary Debrief, but I'm going to have to couch the Canary Debrief entirely under crashing the mode. So we're going to crash the Canary mode this week. So let's do that.
Stick around.
Tell us something we don't know yet.
Class is in session.
We can't risk altering the time stream. We do that, we're all feeling the mode.
Crashing the mode. There's a lot to talk about in this, but let's start with the Canary Debrief stuff, and that's all about time travel. Oof. Good time travel is really hard to do. I mean, it's basically a truism, but there's a reason. As much as I love this episode for its focus on the Flash and introducing Impulse, who I absolutely love, the fact that Bart saves Barry's life when he's supposed to die would cause absolutely massive effects on the timeline. And not just the far forward timeline of, 40 years in the future of Bart's era, but even just the nearby timeline. So if you're going to do time travel, please, 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 please don't take it lightly. But at the same time, that rabbit hole is bottomless. So you also need to decide just how far down it you can go before you're going to get paralyzed through analysis. But let's just look at this episode, for example. So Impulse is now in the past, affecting everything on a daily basis, period. Even if he's not revealing things like, oh, you're going to have twins, and this is their names. Like, even if he's not actively doing something, simply his presence there is going to be changing everything, everyone's lives, and what happens on a moment-to-moment basis. And since he's from a dystopian hellscape, he probably doesn't care too much about that. But still, it's important to note. And when he does save the Flash's life and neutralizes Neutron, Neutron changes clothing in that future present, and his collar disappears, but he's standing in the same spot. He remembers everything that happened in this alternative timeline. Mount Justice is still destroyed. Like, there's still what looks like a nuclear winter going on. Like you said, like, it's not raining ash necessarily anymore, but like the clouds are still dark. It's basically the same the same scene. So why? If Neutron has changed and all of the events of season 2 are completed by Neutron's timeline, then why didn't everything change? Yeah, the mountain's still destroyed because that still gets destroyed, but there's no reason why it wouldn't have been cleaned up and something else had been put in that place or built there or something. We don't technically see the rest of the world, so maybe everything else has changed and there is some reason that it's still destroyed and he just happens to be standing there. But the idea that he's still there is weird, and why does he remember things? An alternative option might have been to have Nathaniel not remember anything because his whole life is now changed. Have the camera follow him, like, say, waking up in his apartment somewhere, living whatever his normal life would have been, even if it's a normal life in a dystopian future, and opening up a window and show us what the world looks like. Like I said, even if it's still a dystopia, or if it's not, or something else. And so we can know without him saying things that make us wonder, why do you even remember this if your entire life has changed? If you're going to have something like this happen, make sure, just one, you cover as many bases as possible. Take the time to think and dig deep into what all the possible consequences are and how you can fold them into your story. And two, find a way to explain how your time travel works, however you're going to choose to do it. There is no explanation of how the time travel works. Having said all of those things, Young Justice decided not to do an explanation of time travel and all that kind of stuff, and we still love the episode and this season. It doesn't break anything necessarily for the show, so you can decide not to dive in deep down the rabbit hole. But if you don't, make sure that you are doing it with intention and understand what the consequences are and how it's going to either hopefully confuse or clarify things for your watchers. And that's it for the Canary Debrief. Yeah. So let's roll into crashing the mode even more.
Yes. That's only some of the crashing the mode.
Yeah, the fact that Mountain Justice does get blown up and it's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so painful.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. To cover up some things, Aqualad blows up the mountain, which was a shock. Yeah. Maybe we'll dive deeper into that in the episode as that comes up. We've got these aliens that we haven't seen yet. They're not Krolataeans. They're taller aliens, and they're in the shadows and that kind of stuff. We, of course, find out later they're the scientist is all they refer to her as, and probably the ambassador, although there were other Reach members there, so it could have been anyone, I suppose.
This episode, we get that Impulse and Flash are both faster than Wally, which in season 1, you could have chalked up that Wally was just not as fast as Flash because he was younger. But right. This episode we see, it's like, oh, Kid Flash is an adult now, and he still isn't as fast as Flash, which, of course, plays into the finale. Yeah. It's painful. The painful finale. Yeah.
Gosh, what else happens in this episode? We find out, of course, that there were two main reasons why Impulse went back in time.
Yeah.
One of the reasons was to save the Flash's life, because clearly he didn't know the Flash. One thing that was really strange, though, to me, and maybe Impulse was just lying, because he actually lies quite a bit in this episode, but there's a scene where like he does the thing where he runs around in a circle and creates this tornado and catches something. I think maybe the Flash. And the Flash is like, that's a cool move. And he said, I learned it from my dad, who learned it from you, which cannot be true in Impulse's future, because the whole episode is implying that Flash dies the day he finds out he's going to have twins. So he couldn't have taught Dawn the maneuver. Again, Impulse lies the whole episode, though, so maybe he just that's wishful thinking on his part, like he's hoping that that's what's going to happen, or something like that. Or if somebody else caught something that I didn't, because that certainly happens on the show, and you guys give me more info and I find out, like I said, the rabbit hole's deeper than I thought. Let us know, but it seems odd.
Yeah, I agree. Because I feel like a lot of the other lies are a lot more obvious when watching it.
Yeah.
Like there are things that he says, like the way he says things, you're like, oh, you are not telling the truth, and we know that because of the scene that we saw. But that one is said a lot more casually than everything else, I feel like.
Right.
So that one tripped me up too when I was watching. I was like, wait, that can't be true at all. but...
And also, at the end, when he kicks the time machine, he's like, it's not working, the stupid thing. Like, that was a really good acting job on Impulse's part. Because we don't know yet in that scene that he knew it was a one-way trip until the scene after that is when he's talking to Nathaniel in the flashback and he says it's a one-way trip. So, yeah, Impulse is a really good liar. And that's something to, I think, keep in mind.
Speaking of that final scene, final scene always raises one question for me. He seems a lot more serious in that scene than we see him throughout the rest of this whole season.
That's a good point.
And he has that one line where he's like, time to suit up, time to be who I have to be, and goes and puts on the costume. And part of me is like, is everything we see of you in the rest of the season kind of not really you? And that just raised some questions for me going back and watch it, because he is so like cynical in that final scene. He's just like, yeah, Neutron, I'm going to go into the time machine, I'm going to do this. And he's like, he doesn't have that kind of joy that we see throughout the rest of the show. And maybe it's just that he's in a dystopian hellscape, but it does raise some questions.
Well, but he's not talking really fast. He's not like doing those characteristic Impulse things. That's a really good point. For some reason, it just never registered with me. Huh. Interesting. Well, if any of the listeners out there have any insights into Impulse and these things, let us know on social media as well. Do you have anything else? I think that's all I've got for Crashing the Mode. I think that's
it for the...
What are we going to see in the near future? Cool. And that's it. So we'll consider that mode successfully crashed. And now people actually know, if you're watching along with us, what crashing the mode means. You also notice that we kind of edited and spliced that Beast Boys conversation as well for our intro to make it a little tighter. But now people know.
When do I get my own reality TV show?
That's right. Oh yeah. So that's a thing too, because in the comics, I've talked about this before. I think in the comics, he's actually a TV star. Garfield is an actor, a well-received actor, even though he's a green-skinned, strange-looking boy. Yeah, which was a pretty funny nod.
I want that to be the main plot of season 3. Beast Boy starting his child acting career.
Outsiders is the name of the reality show he's on. Would be fantastic.
And it's just him being on a teenage superhero show in universe.
Nice. All right, let's jump ahead to some fan service. What do you got for us, Emily?
I've admired your stance on animal rights for years.
This week, we've got an awesome little AMV called Young Justice, How Far We've Come, and it's created by Young Titan 213 on YouTube. It's this awesome little kind of retrospective on season 1. It's pretty emotional for some of it, and it's set to a cool song called How Far We've Come by Matchbox 20, and it's just a cool little thing. I really liked it, and Rich liked it too, so we're sharing it with all of you.
I did. It was really cool. It's a very upbeat. Some of the ones that the MVs we put up there are pretty heavy, and this one's a lot more fun. So I like that one.
Definitely.
Cool. And I think that's it. I think we can wrap up this mission, head out of the cave. Always remember, the best way to support us and support the show is with a 5-star review on iTunes or on your podcatcher of choice.
Please continue to hashtag keep binging YJ and hashtag buy YJ comics on Comixology. You can also now use hashtag Young Justice Outsiders when talking about season 3. And if you want to help us get more episodes, more Secret Origins, actual play podcasts, and a whole lot more, please consider supporting us through Patreon. For just a few dollars a month, you can help us do even more with the show while getting some great rewards for yourself. And remember,
stay whelmed, everyone.
You've been listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files podcast. Our hosts are Rich Howard and Emily Buza. Our editor and producer is Neil Powell. Our theme was composed by Emily Mio. Our logo was created by Kevin Bates. Whelmed is a fan-made podcast and is not officially affiliated with DC Comics, DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Animation, and any other owners of Young Justice or its related source material. As such, these companies have sole ownership of all symbols, images, names, logos, and proprietary material related to Young Justice. Original content of this podcast is ours under Creative Commons. Thanks for listening, and stay whelmed.